We are live.
Back again.
Back again.
Same couch as last time.
Same couch as last
Same
time.
place.
So what have you learned since the last podcast?
Keeping the chill vibes.
The chill vibes.
Yes, I don't want to make this a hysterical, stressful podcast. I don't think anyone needs that in the morning. Even though we can be loud and we can be wild, but no, we need to keep the calm, chill coffee talk vibe.
Okay.
What
Fine.
did you learn?
I learned. Okay, so I talked to a bunch of people about this and asked them what they thought and so on.
Mm.
And one thing I realized myself when editing the first podcast was that I tend to talk very fast sometimes, and I do not speak very clear. Sometimes.
Okay.
Which is fine, I guess. But for me, I feel that it's a good thing to think about. So I will try to do it this podcast.
But when you record yourself and you get to hear yourself on audio and video,
It's terrible.
that is terrible.
Yeah.
That's like a good self-esteem blocker.
Yeah,
a boost.
a lot. I mean, I was on another podcast just before this one released, and
Which one was that one?
Techrekpodden. It went really good.
I thought it was a perfect episode. It's in Swedish though.
It was in Swedish, but I kind of realized that speaking in your native language it does do a huge deal, even though we are pretty okay at speaking English.
Yeah, but Swedish is something else.
Yeah, it's something like, you know, we speak it all the time, so that's pretty much why I think it went so much easier. And then I mean, I worked with Carl Johan before, and he's just MVP at making people comfortable.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I felt when I listened to the podcast, it felt like you were in your. It sounds so cheesy saying in your element, but you were so calm and just collected and just calm.
Yeah, and when I sit here, I'm stressed out.
Yeah, now we're out of here. The nerves.
Exactly. No, but I think that it went well, and I think that I'm super happy that people listen to the podcast and that they enjoy it as well. I heard people using it when they are out running and stuff like that. So I think
Imagine listening to us when running.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's like the beat.
The tempo
Yeah,
that you
like,
want? No, I don't know.
Pick it up.
Pick it up, yeah. I know to everyone who's out running, you can do a bit faster. Come on.
I feel like it's more good morning, everyone, and welcome to the podcast. Hope the subway is good.
Yes.
Get your coffee. Settle in.
Settle in. Yes.
Noise cancelling, please.
Exactly. I think that, yes. But I have a question for you, actually, that I
Go.
that I came up with the other day. If you would get a job offer from Apple,
From Apple. Okay.
would you take it? It's
Well,
a pretty vague question.
Yeah,
right?
I was gonna say. I was like, what is it? What's the role? What's
Yes.
the title? What's the salary? Benefits? I want to know the whole thing. Just because they're Apple, I wouldn't say yes.
No, because I thought about this, but I watched the Apple event that was this week.
The new launch?
When they released the new iPhones. And I always been like an Apple fanboy. I've been using iPhone since iPhone 5, I think, or something, and it's iPhone 15 now, so it's been a while. I use MacBook, I use Apple Watch, everything. And I asked that question to myself, that would I join them if they asked me to join the company?
Yeah.
And my quick answer was yes. And then I realized, okay, but why? What made me want to work for Apple?
Right.
And I came up with a few things that I want to bring up here. And one of the things is they have fantastic products.
Right. I agree.
And not only like they're cool, the brand is cool, but it's actually a fantastic product. So like I use the Apple Watch on a daily basis. I use my iPhone, everything, and I think it's well built.
100%.
And it got
Easy to use.
Easy to use. Got functions that is just terrific to use on a daily basis. And the second one is that when I put on when the event started, they show a video of someone like celebrating birthday, and they had like Apple Watches and stuff like that, and it was very emotional. So it's very like it reminds you of all these good times when you celebrate stuff and with your your mom and dad and grandparents and stuff. And I think that one of the things that I realized that people sometimes forget when it comes to employer branding is that we need to work on emotions as well.
100%.
And they do that in product, but they also do that when it comes to their employer branding. I think that Apple is very, very well on making a product and then tell a story around it to earn a lot of more money because they have a higher price. Like it's a premium quality. And I think that is something that also attracted me, like this, you know, this feeling you get when you see the brand, when you hear them talk about it, is something that makes me very intrigued, and I want to, yes, this is nice. Then they had another video was super cringe. I don't know if you've seen it. They have like
No.
sustainable video, which was it was not the best, but I mean, still, they talk.
They can't be perfect, can they?
When they talked about sustainability, they talked
Right.
about it in another way than usually, because usually companies like, this is our numbers, this is what we're gonna do. They told a story around it and all that stuff. So it's very interesting how Apple is doing something which is it's not rocket science at all, but they are actually very successful at. They have great people. Then they probably can pay great salaries. They have a super cool office in
Have you been, or have you
no,
just seen
no,
content from it? I was just have to ask
no,
that.
no, I've never been. They invited me. No,
I was there as a keynote speaker once
about employer branding.
about employer branding.
No, but actually, so it's super cool. It's like it's called Apple Park, and it's super nice. And I think they have like a lot of nice benefits and stuff like that in San Francisco than what I'm talking about now. So the conclusion I made from all of this is that, hell yeah, I would join Apple, and not just because they're like the biggest company in the world, pretty much, but also because they do great stuff. I mean, their stuff helps people that maybe not be able to write or whatever, and the watch helps people with diseases and stuff. So it's, I mean, and that feel like that's something I want to work with as well, like having a greater purpose when I work. Then you have a good salary and stuff like that. That's already counted in, kind of, but still.
But I also feel like you might be the perfect candidate for Apple in the sense that you are educated, you're invested, you have probably looked into every single Apple product that they have because you're also a user.
Exactly.
So you have already opted in for the product brand, but then they have helped you navigate in the entire Apple story about themselves, because their storytelling is fantastic, and the ads that they do for product, insane. So I mean, you are the perfect candidate in the sense that you're taking the time to fully invest in the company before you have even applied. Do you know what I mean? So when you are, for example, applying for a job, you can basically talk from a place where you already know them to the point where it's more like you can actually bring value into that recruitment process and that conversation, and not just saying, so Apple, tell me about what is it like to work here, or what have you been up to the last 10 years, what's the purpose of your product. So you already know. And you know, because you, one, are interested, like you have an interest in the products yourself, but they have shown the content. They have built their pages in a storytelling way so that you will just stay on their page, click to the next one, and not feel like you want to opt out.
Yes. And isn't that like the essence of great employee branding?
I was going to say, but that brings me to the question, because I think we might have gotten a little ahead of ourselves with the previous episode, just getting right in there.
We were very excited, so
we're so excited, but we need to also take it back a step. And I think sometimes when people are like, okay, define this, define that, define this, I can get a little bit boring. But I'm just curious to hear what employer branding means to you. How do you define it? Because if we do have some sort of definition that we can move around, then we can build on, and the audience can understand on what do we talk about, really.
Exactly. And I think that's a super good question, Sofia.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Wow, thank you for having me.
No, but I actually saw this morning when I was on my way to your place that someone uploaded a post on LinkedIn saying shouldn't be called employer branding, it should be called employer brand management or something.
Okay.
And I didn't read the full post, but there's some, like, that's the right definition. Some people call it should be employee branding, and all that stuff. It's very in Swedish är kärt barn har många namn. And I think that like when I talk to people about what I do, what we do, I say employer branding because it's just easier for people to understand. It's basically the same as digital marketing.
Yeah.
Digital marketing is a lot of things, but then also it could be niched into SEO or whatever. And same as employer branding. You know, you have employer branding, but you also have recruitment marketing for when you want to push campaigns, you want to promote specific jobs, whatever. And then you have like the more strategic brand management. Like it's, for me, employer branding is everything that is related to like hiring and maybe not hiring, but like attracting people to your. I think talent attraction is a good word for that, because it's basically, it's not just promoting people or making videos. It's also about making sure people like it at the company you are and stuff like that. So I think that's my definition. I don't know if that was a very good definition. It wasn't a definition, but I think that's what I think about it.
Exactly. And I think we don't need to have like you can ask ChatGPT.
Exactly.
Let's be honest. And then you ask it again to make it shorter.
Exactly.
And there you go. But to me, I don't have a set definition either. But what I do think employer means to me is really that I see the whole journey, like the whole candidate and employee journey. When I talk about employer branding, I talk about the external and the internal employer branding. What that means to me is that everything starts with, or actually could start with internal, but let's start with external part. Because what I see is that you as a company, you have a set of things that makes people join your company and also what you can offer them. So say, for example, benefits, salary, position itself, location, etc., etc. But then you have the fundamental things that makes people stay.
Exactly.
And those are two key components in order for you to guide your employer brand in a sense. And what that means is that from those parts, you can actually start creating content that attracts people to add to your culture. So culture adds, but you can also attract them with the right skill sets needed for your company really to grow, but also for the current need in that position, for example. So we use those components in order to attract people that can fit into the culture, add to the skill sets that we need in the company. But then they get all excited in a recruitment process. And you really feel when you sign the contract that this is going to be fantastic and I'm so ready to change my life as a candidate, but also as a company, you're like, yes, we got that digital marketing person who can actually help us elevate our brand even more, even further, to build on that storytelling, emotion, all of those things. But then it's very important to me that the internal brand becomes your best friend here. So once you've done the hiring, you've attracted the person, you have connected on all the parts needed for the job, then it comes to the internal brand. And that's where it's so important to keep the momentum. And that's where you really, as a company, you have to walk your talk. So all the things that you've been promising, the two components that I mentioned in the beginning, they need to be true. Because this is when the people come in on their first day and they get to see you for who you are. And if you did not do a good job with promoting that in a truthful, let's say authentic way, that's going to be a mismatch. So in order for me to actually see the whole journey, I need to bring in the two parts of internal and external, because it's all about keeping the momentum, keeping the engagement, keeping the excitement, but also the transparency of what is it really like to work there. And if that's called employer branding, talent attraction, engagement, experience design.
Experience design, never heard that.
Let's go for that then. No, but it's all about your experience, and it's all about how do you make people come together, bring different mindset, that diversity mindset into things, and then we can keep building for a greater future. But in order to even get to that part, that's when you need to start creating content. So to me, employer branding is also very much about the content creation part. And how do you actually, you might have a great culture. You talked a little bit about this in the last episode. So one might have a great company culture. You might be doing fantastic things. Your employees are happy, clappy. You have fantastic coffee. All of those things. But if you're not telling anyone,
how are they gonna know?
Exactly. And maybe word of mouth. Because if you love your job, you tell your friends and family.
That's true.
All of those things. But if the company can also boost that, word of mouth, that's already going. You have your brand ambassadors going. But then you also need to, for example, have some sort of page where people can actually land and understand more about who you are as an employer.
And I think that word of mouth is great, but also having, you want to attract different people as well. You don't want to just attract people's best friends.
No, 100%.
You want to have the diversity in company. You want to, when you expand across, I don't know, into the US or whatever, if you're a Swedish company, you want to be able to attract people there. Content is a very good way of just showing the great culture that you have and showing that you actually have real people working at the company. It's not just actors and stuff like that. It's like real people. And I think that is something that a lot of they think that they have to be perfect when they make content.
Companies think so.
Yeah, companies
think
so. Yeah.
Right.
And I
polished
think like
everything.
it needs to be polished. It needs to be great. Have to be like this perfect, charismatic person that actually is super good. And I think that just take like normal people, because in the end we are normal people, all of
We're
us.
just people.
Exactly, and we don't want to be like, if you see someone that is like perfect, I think that you would be a bit maybe afraid even, like, okay, is this only people who work here if you only see perfect people? And I think that when I create content for people, for clients, I think it's important not to sometimes I script stuff, but sometimes usually I do like asking them real questions and then just have a conversation. I think you do the same.
Yeah.
And that's super powerful because you also get the things when it's not perfect. And if you include that, you actually show that these are humans. It's not just perfect polished people. You can actually be the person you want to be here. You are nervous when you record a video. You are like, that's how it is. And I think that's super powerful. I think a lot of companies, especially big ones, forget that.
Yeah, because they want to portray that perfect image outwards.
And that's a problem. I think that we need to, I think that's why we have this podcast also, is that to kind of but showcase and talk about the employer branding is a lot about the imperfections as well.
100%. And I think, just like you said, we're doing this podcast also as an experiment, that this is something that, for example, a company could do
100%.
as a part of their employer branding strategy. Just have 2 employees. It could be the same, it could be different ones, whatever you want to do, but have them sit down and have a conversation.
Exactly. And just be chill. I mean, it doesn't have to be this fancy studio or whatever.
No.
And I think I was actually thinking about this.
What do you mean? This is a fancy studio right here.
Your apartment's really nice. But I've actually thought about this when on the way here as well, that what if in the future we could have a studio? But would it be the same? I mean, we could probably make it look nice and cozy and all that stuff, but it's kind of one of the things that we want to have, like with this podcast, and I think that a lot of people enjoy with this podcast also, is that it's just 2 random people sitting in a sofa chatting with great audio.
Yes, that's a big part though. The great audio part. Let's not forget about that one. Like, you can't.
I listened to a podcast, Swedish, like it's 2 comedians having it, and they talked about boys in their 20s starting a podcast, buying the most expensive audio, and I was like, fuck, that's me.
You're like, damn.
But I was I was like, okay, I'm one of these guys now. Fuck.
Own it.
Yes.
Own it. No, you know what I was just thinking now when we're talking about podcast, and that it could be a part of the content strategy as an employer brand person in a company. What if, I mean, everything depends on your office setting, but say for example that you have, you just place a couch in the middle of the office, like not closed doors, none of that. You're in the middle of the thing. Put 2 people in there, just like you and I right now.
2 mics.
2 mics, and then you just start talking, and you get to see also with like people coming in like, good morning, yeah, I know the coffee thing, it doesn't work, but we'll have someone come over. Okay, have a good day, I'll talk to you later. Oh, by the way, the meeting, okay. And actually why we are here today, but you know what I mean, like you get to see the entire
you
thing.
know, like the daily people, like who they are actually are, not
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the interactions of that, like good morning, like we say good morning to one another.
We do.
Perfect.
Yeah, we do.
That's
yeah.
great to have in that part, that's actually a behavior endorsed in the company. That we say hi to everyone coming in, whatever.
Giving away free ideas here. That's good. That's very generous.
Giving away everything.
No, but I agree. I think that's a really fun idea to just put up some mics, maybe a camera, a couch, and then just like let it.
Can we have Sweef sponsor it?
Yes, Sweef, if you're listening.
We really want you.
Yeah. But I mean, you can say it.
Would you take a job at Sweef? No. I would.
You would.
That's when I say
just
yes.
because you like fancy couches.
They're fancy, but they're more fancy than that. But it's just their fabrics and the
But once
setting.
again, but that's really interesting because it's a lot about the product, and I think we
100%.
shouldn't estimate how you need to have an actual interesting product if you want to attract people or a bigger purpose. Yeah, but back to
back to it.
and
Back to the couch.
Back to the couch. I can't really remember what we were talking about, but
The free content ideas.
the free content. Yeah, exactly. But exactly to record something like that and just let it go and then cut out the best pieces. I think that something that is a smart way to do. And I think you guys, or Ben, when I think you worked at Local Games back then, you did one thing with Klarna.
Yes, they put a studio up in their kickoff.
Yeah,
event.
exactly. You just put up like cameras and mics, and people came there and like talked about shit. Like there was nothing like actually maybe not the interesting, like there's like Klarna is great, this is what I had to breakfast, stuff like that. It was very chill and very easygoing, and I think I love that video because I thought it was really like nice. It was some like kick to it, and I actually stole that idea straight off for the company I worked back then at Ants, and we did a similar thing. So I mean, it's
kudos to Ben and Amir.
Kudos, yeah, I love that video. It's super nice.
Yeah.
Maybe we can include it in the description. So
I think people need to see it actually.
Yeah.
It's a great video, and I just remember when they planned for that video, they were like, we're gonna go to Klarna's event.
Yeah.
What should we do? How do you capture an event? So that's another thing that maybe we can come into, talk about content, like going to events.
Yeah.
What should you do? What setup should you bring? Who should you talk to?
How do you talk to them?
How do you talk to them? How do you capture what happened without making just a wait, we went to event. Wait. Like,
I mean, yeah, it's that's one of the most boring things that can happen in companies. Like, we're having a conference or whatever, and then it's just shit. It's like super boring to. Maybe it's interesting for the people.
It's so inside out.
Yeah, but exactly, it's interesting for the people working there, probably, and
to see recaps, like, oh, we did this.
Yeah, but how do you tell that story? What happened there, in externally? And last year, Funnel went to Barcelona for Camp Funnel, and I worked with two great photographers and videographers.
Yeah, I remember.
And we did some content around that, and I think that that was super successful because I was very clear with them that I want this to be like, it should feel like you are part of this. It shouldn't be that you are outside looking in. It should be that you feel like this is some place I could work and like this people I could hang out with. And the content we created was super successful.
Yeah, it was
and
really
people
great
loved
content.
it, and like candidates loved it. So always trying to like include people and not make it just like this is our clique.
100%. I think it's, of course you can share a video like that internally and just be like, okay, yeah, I remember this happened. Oh yeah, we had that keynote speaker
And
talking
that's
about
important
this.
as well.
Like, that's really important to recap, to like all come together, kind of
Yeah.
like the check-ins that I talked about last time. Like,
Yes.
again, once you go back to your everyday work life, you can still look at that video and be like, that's why I'm here. That's what we're
I
talking
love
about.
that
Or
moment, yeah.
whatever it might be. But again, if you're gonna do an event video and the plan is to actually distribute it externally afterwards, that's when you have to get people hooked into, what was it like? What did you see? What did you do? I mean, people care about the food that you had, but really, all the food shots that we have from event videos.
Here's some cool mini hamburgers.
Yeah,
which
like-
I love, but
Yeah, love that, and love the food in general. So not hating on that part, but again, I think it's so important that we also, like you say, you build the story so that you actually can bring someone with you. Otherwise, it's like listening to someone's conversation. Jesus, what's going on here? Listening to someone's conversation, and they're just doing internal jokes.
exactly.
That's just what it is.
I hate that.
Yeah. Yep. Who doesn't?
Who
You feel
doesn't?
excluded, and
Yeah.
you don't want to fall into that trap, creating content, and then you're basically just excluding rather than including and
Yeah.
bringing someone into it.
Yeah, I agree. I
But
think
that comes into storytelling, great storytelling, and it's hard.
that's very hard. I mean, that's if you are good at storytelling, you're like.
Did you win life?
Yeah, but pretty much. I mean, we actually talked about this yesterday. There's one guy at Funnel in the US. He's probably one of the most he's told stories when we were watching Formula One. We were in Barcelona, and he was the way he told stories. Like, we cried because it was so funny, and I realized that afterwards. Like, he is an exceptional storyteller.
Yeah.
Of telling story. I mean, he's super good at it. He's like, he knows how to have the amount of details and like building. Then it's like the other people that are just making, like, they're telling a funny story, and then they have to add too much details, and it just
Yeah.
becomes like, you know.
Yeah, 100%.
So I think that having actually practicing storytelling or read online how to tell a good story, I think that's a super valuable thing that people forget when it comes to employer branding. I think that's in everything. Like, if you create written content, video content, podcast content, whatever, be good at telling a story, and you will see a lot of magic happening.
Do you see that happening in your, for example, now you're at the client funnel, do you see the marketing department at Funnel doing this as well? Because I think
Storytelling.
like storytelling about the product
Yeah,
itself.
for sure. I think they're super good at talking about, because we're selling a product that can be like sometimes really difficult to understand, kind of, and it's very niched audience. Like, this digital marketing is B2B. It's not Apple or Swift where you have consumer products, because
Yeah.
face it, if you're selling a consumer product, you probably have a easier time attracting people because they understand like the product and stuff like that. Just like I told you. Funnel is a business-to-business company. We use we have a digital marketing hub. I will not go into exactly what it does today, but yeah. And I think
Another episode.
I can have a Funnel episode. But I think that what we say is that we want to attract digital marketers to Funnel. Is super good, because then we have a bunch of people that know the product because they're using the product. So it gets easier. So I mean, then you have to tell a story around, how can we actually benefit it and so on. And I think storytelling, selling a product is super important as well, and having some kind of narrative and some story to work with. And I think Funnel's marketing department is super good at that. But I think sometimes that I struggle with is, how do we tell a story to the candidates that is not working with in marketing, or like maybe in dev, or something that's not maybe too product related. Dev is product related probably, but still, let's say finance or legal, whatever. How do we convince them that this is an exciting company? I think that's sometimes a difficult part, but you find your ways to do it.
Yeah. I want to regroup and go back to the Apple thing where we started.
Yes.
And now when I said it, I kind of lost my thread, but let's give it a try. So when you talked about Apple previously, you said that, did I want to start working at Apple? And I was a little hesitant.
Yeah.
When I said Sweef, I was like, boom, you had me.
Yeah.
I want to go there right now.
Yeah.
Because I'm attached to the product. I'm invested in the product.
Yeah. But do you know much about the culture at Swift?
No, not at all.
Okay.
No. Honestly, only product.
Yeah.
I mean, I think they're great people in the stores, and they're very customer friendly, and like all of those
But
things.
that also makes a huge difference.
That makes a huge difference. So yes, but what I was gonna get to was more about the employer branding connection to the overall consumer brand that you have, because users can easily become employees, and employees might be turning into users.
Promoted to customer.
Exactly. Yes. Good, Martin. Awesome. That's a way to funnel people through.
Yeah.
Become an employee and then you buy a product. No, but what I was going to say is that sometimes I feel when you're working with employer branding that you have to always voice the why.
Yep.
Going back to last episode when we talked about where do you start. But it's so interlinked with the consumer brand that it's of course very important to nurture your employer brand in that sense, that bring the full scope, because and a user like you want to work at Apple because you've seen all the products and everything, and then on top of that you've seen content they created, you probably heard great keynote speeches from internal people as well, and all of those things, and that makes you feel excited. That's the same with employer branding going for all companies, that the overall consumer brand that you have, or the product brand, whatever you might be doing as a service or product, that is also going to be a fundamental part in attracting people and building the story to them. And that is something that I think it's always so important also to bring to the table when you're talking about why should you work with employer branding, that it's really important that you understand that you might also be talking to users. So
Yep.
Candidates and users, they can be the same, they can be different, but sometimes you might also be talking to users just as much as maybe your customer excellence team are doing. So you always need to have that, like, that's why I think talent acquisition and those functions also are being challenged, because they also need to be they have the direct contact with users to collect feedback and insights and everything, but not so prioritized internally.
Isn't that a thing that a lot of companies miss when it comes to employer branding, is that they don't see, like, they say employer branding is one thing and then they say marketing is another thing, and we don't work together because you guys are doing something different than marketing, it feels a very typical conversation that I usually hear people having, but as you say, like, they affect each other. And I think that we actually have proof on that at Funnel, that one guy actually wrote to us saying, like, I saw this piece about this person and that kind of made me interested in Funnel as a company, and then I looked into product, and then I felt, oh wow, this was a cool product, and then I purchased the product. That is just amazing, because we are humans, we are emotional, we're not very rational in our how we behave. So why not have people that work at Funnel or whatever company you work at showcasing that? I don't know if I derail here a bit.
No,
but
go for it.
But I think that, as you say, like, users, candidates, like, they are in somewhat in the same atmosphere that you need to work with. And I think that if you put focus on the people, promoting the people, that's going to benefit the product as well.
100%.
Like, it's
100%.
That's how it works.
But question then, when working with employer branding and, for example, the visual identity of an employer brand. So, for example, we're talking a lot about Funnel here, so kudos to Funnel. But just take that as an example. Or let's take another one. Let's take IKEA. They have one visual identity for their product brand. Should their employer brand use a different visual identity? The same?
Do you mean like colors and stuff like that?
Colors and graphic elements, maybe even fonts. So everything about the brand.
I think there's a lot of, especially for IKEA, it's a lot of, you can do a lot of things with the product thing, like the visual identity in the employer branding as well. Like as you said, like, just when you said fonts, I just realized how you can make like these cool headlines with the fonts they have in their product catalog.
They should do ads, like job ads looking like their product tags.
Exactly.
Boom, there you go. Another tip.
Exactly. No.
Free.
No, but I think that you should combine it as much as possible, because it's, instead of having, because that's also another thing that's a lot of times happened with employer brand, is that you separate it. So you have one employer brand, you have one company brand. In the end,
it's all
everything is connected, and you need to be aligned with your company brand with also employer brand, because it's going to affect each other, as we're told. So I think that just go with the same color, but then you can do like stuff around it. You can actually use, I mean, it would be super cool to have employer branding video, people sitting in one of the showing rooms at IKEA, use the product, like, this is our most sold product, like sitting on this most sold product that we have ever created. This is one of the things I've been working, stuff like that. They have so much like stuff they could do.
So my question now is, would you take a job at IKEA? No, no, but
IKEA, yeah.
I hear you. One thing though that we are currently working with at Lunar is that to actually create an employee an visual identity for our employer brand, meaning that we have the Lunar visual identity for the overall brand, but we're also discovering into using perhaps some different colors. And when I say different, I don't mean pink, whatever. Like we're
still connected to the whole
brand.
But
it's still connected to the whole brand, but we might perhaps, so say for example, black is one of the colors that we use in Lunar and everything, and green and blue, but we have decided to go wild with them with the black theme. So instead of using the black and blue like Lunar do for their consumer brand, this is just an example, but then we might use that in a different way.
So when you see the content or when you like connect with the employer brand, this is an employer brand related.
Yes.
Okay, yeah.
Because we are not always talking to users. We are sometimes talking to candidates. What? Mind blown. But at the same time, we still want the two, since we can't just define, or we can't just, select that only candidates can see this. Like we talked about users and candidates very much hand in hand. But we still want them to feel like, oh, that's that company talking. But we do want to do it with a little bit of a twist so that they are a little bit separated. And that is something that we are discovering right now and exploring.
Super interesting.
Nothing is set in stone, but that's going to be a fundamental piece in how we, for example, set the new creative initiatives for the fall and 2024.
Yeah, I think it's a super interesting idea to work with.
It's fun, but it's also, like you say, you don't want to separate them
too much,
because again, it's not two different worlds. We're still working under the same roof. We're working for the same product development. We're working underneath the same common mission and all of those things, but we just want to show our people a little bit more.
But I like the idea that you say that you kind of, you see this and it's like, it's employer branding related or not. But it's,
it's going to be interesting.
You have to
I'll tell you more about it.
Let us know how it will go when you started.
Yes.
So next spring you will know if you listen to the podcast
in
still.
4 years from now, you'll hear about my success story doing a visual identity for a employer brand.
Oh God, yeah.
No, but it's and that's the thing that I also want to come back to when it comes to employer branding. It's all about like test and try. Of course, you can change the color every week to see what works the best, but try, experiment, nudge, see what happens if you, for example, have a pink background, whatever it might be. Like, don't get stuck in your ways. Always be cautious that you might be talking to users and candidates.
Yeah.
So don't go wild being stupid, but also dare to step away from what's already out there. Sometimes I feel so much that we end up in this box and it's like, you can only do job ads in a written format and that's it. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
you can't, that's the only thing you can do.
Yeah.
But again, say that we just we take a step back and we're like, okay, you don't know anything about how to attract candidates today. You haven't seen anything. You just blank your mind. You have no idea of what's been ever done before. How would you do it? Design the process again. And maybe, I'm not saying that we should reinvent the wheel here. Take the best parts, but don't get stuck in your ways and too limited in that.
But you also need to try stuff.
100%.
Because that's also one thing, that consistency. Don't underestimate that.
Consistency is
like
key.
Just get stuff out and then you realize on the way, this sucks, this works, this sucks, this works. Like, I mean, as long as you don't fuck up bad, just go for it.
Are you a huge follower of Gary Vee and his content strategy?
I've seen a lot of content. I think he's a really good example on consistency and just pushing content, being all over the place.
Yeah, and listening to feedback, because that's actually one of his, and feedback goes into how did it perform and all these things. But he creates many different micro content pieces from an overall content thing that he has, and he have evergreen content format. But then from there he creates so many different micro content pieces from it, and he always tests them to see how they perform and
Yeah.
what response did he get and all these things, and then he do either more of them or less of them.
Which is the way you should work.
Yeah. What's stopping us from doing it, you think?
From us doing micro content.
No, but in general, because I feel like, again, we're stuck into
I
like...
think it's a lot of... One thing is like people don't actually know how to measure it and stuff like that.
You gave me the look like, Sophia, what are you doing? Are we going off script here?
No. No, but I think that people like knowledge, I mean, obviously it's like, how do you do it? Like he has a team working with it, so on. And then also what I was trying to get to now is that people, like he has a lot of people working, a lot of great people, like everyone, not everyone, a lot of people want to work with Gary Vee because he's one of the in forefront when it comes to marketing. So he'll have a lot of great people working with him, and they try a lot of stuff. And I think that as employer branding people, we also need to dare to try stuff and not be like, this should be perfect, because sometimes you do stuff that you think is great and then it's not. Because I think that, I mean, my girlfriend is studying UX design now, and they talk a lot about that. You're like, don't design something just for yourself, because it's very easy to like, this looks pretty, this looks nice, and you think like, okay, this is what the customer is gonna like. But then you realize you push the code or whatever, it doesn't work because that's not what the customer wants.
No, to take a different route.
Exactly. And I think always having that in mind, just try stuff, testing out, and kind of get the feedback back in like in numbers, but also like comments and stuff like that, and then take it from there. Like you need to discover. You can't be perfect from the start.
Wow, can't be perfect from the start.
I think that's a good end, because you need to...
Yeah, I have town hall in 8 minutes.
In 8 minutes. But I think one thing before we leave this episode.
Before we leave the room.
Next podcast, I want you, and I'm going to do it as well, to do like, not research a company, but think of a company that you would like to work for.
Sweef.
No, but not Sweef.
Okay.
Another company than Swift, but also we need to be like a bit more specific.
Yeah, I know.
So like content, why, like in the beginning, why do they have an interesting product, whatever, and then like what kind of content, how did they like get your attention from the beginning and stuff like. Try to like as specific as possible, and we're kind of gonna do a case maybe around it and talk about it.
Sure.
And then we'll see.
Good idea. Let's do it. Thank you, Martin.
Thank you
for awesome.
this.
Thank you for coming, and thank you everyone for listening in. Should we say what podcast they listen to, because you want to do the intro?
Right.
Should we do an outro?
An outro. You are listening to Generation EB.
And now you can cut that into the beginning of the podcast, and then we'll go from here. Perfect. See you guys.
See you. Bye.